ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this District Planning Committee meeting on Thursday, the 18th of January 2024. Before we start the meeting, I'd just like to make a few introductions. I'm Chris Phillips, the chairman of the committee. On my left, is Councillor Sweatman, my vice chairman. On my right is Stephen King, the planning applications team leader. On his right is Kobe Banani, our solicitor for today. In the corner are representatives of Democratic Services who will be taking the minutes and working the technology for us today. Right, so if I can now move on to the agenda. To receive apologies, I've received apologies from Councillor Prescott. To receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Do any members wish to declare an interest? Councillor Jackson.
Yes, I'm a member of Hurstwood Point and Sayers Common Parish Council, and the second item on the agenda is in the parish.
Thank you. Any other declarations? Thank you. Right, we move on to item 3. Can I just have by affirmation your agreements to my signing the minutes of the meeting of the 14th of December?
Agree.
Thank you very much. To consider any items that the chairman agrees to take as urgent business, I have none. So we now move on to the substantive part of the agenda. Item 5 is DM 21 1842, land at Queen Victoria Hospital, Holt High Road, East Grinstead. And I'd ask Stuart Malcolm to take us through the application, please.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. Yeah, if I could just draw members' attention to the update sheet first of all, please. You should all have should have had an electronic copy earlier and hopefully a hard copy too, if required. So there's a few updates to take you through. We've had some additional letters of representation, 3 in total. A lot of issues already set out in the committee report, but just listed some extra ones that have been raised by these additional letters of representation. I won't list them all out now, I won't read them all out now, but they're within the update sheet. We've had a letter from Mims Davis MP, which shared an approach from local residents setting out their concerns with the application. And I understand this was shared directly with the committee members yesterday, I believe. Moving on, para 9.3 in the report, just for completeness, reference should also be made to a tree preservation order that covers some of the trees around the southern boundary of the site. Reference obviously made to the preservation order that covers the northern half of the site, but just for completeness, reference should be made to these the 2005 preservation order that covers. Most of the trees are just to the south of the boundary, but there are some sort of on and just within the boundary itself. Appendix A, you may have noted from the report that conditions 8 and 9 are a bit too similar for my liking. So we're looking to merge conditions 8 and 9 so that condition 8 reads as what is set out in the update sheet. But that is all to do with the construction management plan arrangement. So rather than have 2 conditions that are similar, it's much simpler to have 1 condition to cover those relevant issues. And then obviously just to confirm that the condition 10 becomes condition 9, all the conditions get renumbered accordingly. Appendix B, consultations. You'll have noted from the tree officer comments in Appendix B that reference is made by the officer to her original comments on the application, which were made way back in July 2021. So again, for clarity, it's important that these original comments, that I must stress that these were based on an earlier iteration of the scheme before amendments were made, but reference is made to them, so it's fair that they're in there, and they're listed there in full within the update sheet. And the final update is just confirmation from the council's ecological consultant confirming the position on great crested newts that no evidence has been found for great crested newts within the site. Right, so the application itself, I'll just take members through some of the slides I've got for you. So the application site is the land to the western side of the Queen Victoria Hospital within East Grinstead. The site is shown by the red line on the plan before you, and it measures 1.5 hectares in area and is accessed from Oakfield Way to the west rather than through the hospital grounds to the east. The site is located on the edge of the town but is within the defined built-up area boundary of East Grinstead. So the site is again outlined on both these drawings by the red line. It's undeveloped and currently consists of woodland and scrubland with a pond down in the far southern part of the site. The aerial image on the right-hand side quite clearly shows the extent of the woodland on the site at present, and members that were able to visit the site before the meeting will have noted that, obviously. The northern part of the site is covered by a tree preservation order, so just switching back to the left-hand plan, this is demarcated by the green square cross-hatching on the plan. This dates from 1993, this preservation order. Reference is made in the report to an area of ancient woodland, which is outside the site, and this is shown by the green diagonal hatching up in the north, well, to the northeast of the site, with this being beyond the required 15-metre buffer to the development. This bright pink line, which hopefully you can see in contrast to the red line, is just on the left-hand side or the west, to be technical. Well, not runs just down the western side of the boundary before it then goes into the site, before it turns in a westerly direction and runs through the site and follows Oakfield Way down to the west. This plan also shows the nearest neighbouring properties, residential properties that is, with those on Beachfields further to the north and those on Oakfield Way immediately to the west. Properties on St Margaret's Road are located beyond these garages to the west, and there are some properties on Elizabeth Crescent further to the southwest of the application site. So as members will have seen from the report, and really of fundamental importance to the determination of this application, is the fact the site forms part of a site that is allocated for housing. So policy EG8, which is a saved policy from the 2004 local plan, so forms part of the district plan, and as such the development plan allocates the land shown on this plan for approximately 40 dwellings. Members will be aware that planning law requires that decisions are made in accordance with the development plan unless material planning considerations indicate otherwise. It's important to point out, though, that this application for 30 units does not cover all of the land that is subject to the allocation of 40 houses. So these garages that I referenced a moment ago on the preceding image are located immediately to the west, and some open space immediately to the south of them. This area falls outside of the application site but within the broader allocation, and that land is, I understand, in separate ownership to the application site. That's before you now. So this plan also shows land to the north as being within the defined countryside, and land to the east, represented by this as a darker green, is within the East Grinstead Neighbourhood Plan area of SS6, which relates to the hospital. This seeks to ensure new development does not prejudice the desire to protect the hospital, whilst also supporting new hospital facilities. So the application before the committee today seeks planning permission, or full planning permission I should say, for the development of 30 houses on the site, with these being a mixture of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bed homes. Of the 30 houses, the applicant is providing 40% policy compliant level of affordable homes, which equates to 12 units. The 40% figure derives from the specific site allocation requirement of EG8 rather than the general affordable housing policy of the district plan, which requires 30%. So the existing access point onto Oakfield Way, which is this sort of western extremity of the site, will be utilised to create the permanent access to the site, and this will be for both pedestrians and vehicular access. 3 pairs of semi-detached homes then located on the northern side of the new access road, close to the entrance into the site. The private access route that runs to the rear of the hospital will be retained along the new access road. This new access road will then have spurs leading to the north and southern portions of the site. So to the south, there's a further pair of semi-detached homes, which are located here, and two fairly modest apartment blocks with 6 units located in each. And these apartment blocks where the 12 affordable homes are located, with these being 4 one-bed units and 8 two-bed units. Back to the northern half, a small sort of U-shape really of 10 semi-detached and detached homes complete the development in this part of the site, and these are located around a small area of open space that centres really on a retained tree. The pedestrian link is also being provided to the northern boundary of the site. In terms of car parking, this is being provided for each of the units, and a number of visitor spaces are also included. So given the nature of the existing site as discussed, and as members will have seen when visiting the site, there are clearly a number of trees that will be lost as a result of the development, with this being an inevitable outcome of the site allocation. Paragraph 12.76 of the report highlights the loss and confirms the overwhelming majority of removed trees as being within category B or C, with there being just one category A tree being lost as a result of a knotweed issue. So that's not to downplay the loss in terms of numbers, but it is to confirm that the proposed layout does seek to retain the better quality trees within the site, and that equates to 16 out of 17 category A trees being retained. So this plan is the landscape master plan, which shows the tree retention largely around the site perimeter. The tree officer has some outstanding issues on the exact detail for the landscaping, and as such a condition will be required to secure acceptable details on an appropriate landscaping scheme and ensuring that planting is in suitable locations. But overall, officers are content that the scheme does at least seek to minimise the impact on the best quality trees within the site. So in this respect, it's concluded that the development complies with EG8 of the district plan, which is the site allocation, which requires development of this site to ensure, where practicable, the retention and protection of all mature trees. This plan also shows some of the on-site biodiversity enhancements, such as the installation of bird boxes and bat boxes, but these on-site interventions are, however, not the only enhancements being proposed. As members will have seen from the report, the applicant has had to ensure that there is no net loss of biodiversity in order to comply with the requirements of DP 38 of the district plan. A bit like the tree issue, given the conditions of the existing site, the original ecology submissions indicated that even with the on-site interventions, the development would still result in a net loss of biodiversity within the application site, which would have been a conflict with DP 38. The applicant has therefore identified land immediately to the east of the application site, and this is identified by the green line, which is within their ownership or control, to use as an offsetting site for biodiversity net gain. The council's ecological consultant has confirmed that with both the on-site and, say, the on-site within the red line and the off-site measures within the green line, that these combined, the development will achieve a biodiversity net gain of 27%. So all of the long-term ecological management required to secure such an uplift will be secured through condition with the monitoring that's required coming through the legal agreement. The council's ecological consultant has also confirmed that there are no objections in respect to the impact on any protected species within the site, with precautionary measures, mitigation and enhancement being secured through condition. Moving on to the highways issues, we've got the junction layout and the refuse tracking plan show here. The junction plan on the left-hand side shows the existing wall on the footpath, which is located here, as being removed at the entrance, with the access at this point being 4.8 metres wide before it widens to 6 metres further into the site. The priority access arrangements for the traffic into the site will also be formalised. The primary reason to put the refuse tracking plan up is really because it helps to illustrate the parking numbers. There are 63 spaces in total for the 30 units. Sorry, I shouldn't have said total, but 63 spaces for the 30 units plus 12 visitor spaces, which satisfies the local highways authority. It's quite clearly evident now that from the representations received that the highway's impact is a major issue for local residents, with much of the concern focusing on the safety impacts on the roads in the immediate vicinity. The application submissions have, though, been robustly assessed by our highways colleagues at West Sussex, who have also visited the site to see the access arrangements and local circumstances for themselves. Paragraphs 12.38 to 12.40 of the report reference the concerns about the impact on Blackwell Farm Road and make clear that it's also acknowledged by the local highways authority that there is an issue with an on-street parking and verge footway parking taking place at busy times. It is, however, also recognised by the highways authority that this is an existing issue, and it is important to reinforce the point that an assessment must be made of the impacts of this specific application. It's also recognised that Blackwell Farm Road already has parking restrictions in place at locations to protect the highway from unsafe and obstructive parking. Members will be well aware that a new development cannot be required to resolve existing issues. In this case, the professional highways advice is clear that this proposal for 30 units will not raise a highway safety concern based on the impact on local junctions or by contributing to parking on the roadways. Paragraph 12.34 of the report sets out why the lay-by and mini roundabout, as referenced in the site allocation policy EG8, are no longer required for highways purposes. Now, this is because since the policy was first drafted 20 years ago, in 2004, residential street design and best practice guidance has changed, primarily with the introduction of Manual for Streets guidance document in 2007. Under this more up-to-date guidance, such measures are now no longer required to make the proposal acceptable in planning terms. Some concerns have also been raised about the timing of the parking survey and road safety audit carried out by the applicant. Should make clear that road safety audits were allowed to be undertaken at a national level during the COVID lockdown, and this one took place in April 2021, actually a day after the unlocking of some COVID restrictions. Given the nature of the site visit for a safety audit, which is to understand the road safety implications of the proposals, the site visit at this time is considered appropriate by West Sussex Highways. And in terms of the applicant's parking survey, this was undertaken in September 2021 when no COVID lockdown restrictions were in place, and is therefore, again, also considered acceptable by West Sussex Highways. West Sussex have also confirmed that the scale of the development for just 30 units would not require the submission of additional details on matters such as speed surveys or junction capacity modelling work. So the overall conclusion on highways matters is that there are no technical objections or reasons to refuse the scheme that is not considered to have an unacceptable impact on highway safety, or will it result in severe cumulative impacts on the operation of the highway network. So I've just got a few sample elevations to show you now, starting on the left-hand side, which is one of the apartment blocks, which incorporates the 6 affordable units down in the southern part of the development. On the top right, we've got plots 1 and 2, which is that first pair of semi-detached houses that will be on the left as you come into the development adjacent to the Oakfield Way properties. And then below that on the right hand side, we've got just one of the detached houses located in the northern part of the site, with this one being plot 8. So since the scheme was first submitted, officers have negotiated a better design quality for the scheme that now has the support of the urban designer. This is largely due to the fact that it's now a better organised scheme that provides enough space around the retained trees to help ensure they are safeguarded in the future, to provide an attractive backdrop to the site and the surroundings. The urban designer is also happy with the appearance and scale of the buildings, although some detailed design issues are to be secured by condition, with these set out in Appendix A. In amenity terms, the applicant has designed the scheme to respond to the neighbouring properties and are designed or located far away enough to ensure that significant harm will not occur through overlooking loss of privacy or a loss of light. The landscaping condition will ensure we can secure additional measures along any of the site boundaries where it is deemed necessary. So I'll just start to conclude now with start finishing with a few photographs of the site. This first image is a view of the entrance into the site at the access point at the very end of Oakfield Way, with the wall to be removed that I referenced a moment ago on the junction plan, located on the left-hand side. Second photo is from broadly the same position, but looking the opposite way, back down Oakfield Way to the west. Photo 3, this is an image taken right at the northern boundary of the site, looking in a broadly westerly direction. Photo 4 is another image of the northern part of the site, taken in close proximity to the access road, again sort of looking north into the site, really to give you a flavour of the condition of the site at present. Photo 5 shows the view from the eastern end of the site, looking in a westerly direction, back down the access road towards the entrance from Oakfield Way, which is located just at this point down here. Photo 6, this is a view from just within the southern part of the site, and again, really just to give you an indication of the condition of the site at present. And the final photo, this is actually a view towards the pond in the far south of the site. This glistening bit here is the pond surface. It's quite so well hidden away at the moment. There is fencing around much of it, although there is a gap in the fencing. But this is a view to the south of the pond at the very sort of extremity of the site. So, in conclusion, Chair and members, planning officers consider that this is an acceptable scheme that meets the relevant policy requirements of the site allocation, that being EG8, as well as the rest of the development plan taken as a whole. Overall, there are not considered to be any sustainable grounds to reject the proposed development on this allocated site, and the application is therefore recommended for approval. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Right, we now move on to speakers. Just remind everybody, and I know they have been advised by Democratic Services, but public speakers are limited to 3 minutes. I will try and indicate when there is a minute left. The time will show reducing time in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. At 2 minutes, I will try and indicate that you've got a minute left. And at 3 minutes, I will ask you to complete your presentation in one sentence. We do have a district councillor speaking, and Councillor Belsey is not limited to 3 minutes, in the same way as public speakers are. The time will start when you start speaking. I think you've been shown how the mics will work, and so as soon as you start speaking, 3 minutes and then running down will start in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. So, if we can have the first of the public speakers, please, Kerry Henderson.
I have thought long and hard about what I wanted to talk to you today. I could have talked about the fact that this proposal contravenes 6 district and neighbourhood plan policies and 7 material planning considerations, but you should already know that and be acting on it. I could talk to you about the traffic issues that will cause, especially given the current traffic issues. But from the huge number of residents who have already raised that concern, you should know that that is an issue. After all, and despite what highways would have you believe, us residents can't all be wrong. I could talk to you about my 9-year-old who cries and panics every time he sees a construction vehicle near our road, as he thinks that's the day his road and his safe refuge of home will be ruined by this proposed development. But I'm not sure you will pay attention to his feelings. So what I thought I would talk about was historical matters. Historically, the land the hospital is on was bequeathed by Lord Kindersley to the town for the sole purposes in perpetuity for hospital use. The current Lord Kindersley has emailed me to say he wants the original intent of this covenant upheld. Also, historically, such applications relating to this site have been rejected over and over again, including at public inquiry, which highlighted all the issues we are still raising. Only now they are exponentially worse as car ownership has gone up and there are more houses on the Blackwell Farm cul-de-sac estate. We're in historical times that are nationally being celebrated by the preservation and planting of trees. This will not only commemorate our royal family, but be part of the historical solution to climate change. So why then are you even considering an application that will destroy a woodland? You know, you too could be part of history, but which history do you want to be part of? The one where you not only reject this application, but go further and remove this piece of land from the local allocation. You have the power to do that and will be remembered heroically for it. Or the one that allows this to go through, ruins a neighbourhood, destroys a woodland with its numerous legally protected species, takes away play streets, adds significant and unacceptable noise to my little road, leaves people's safe refuges of home feeling overlooked, adds significant congestion to an already overcrowded network, and puts yet more pressure on our town's overstretched resources. Be strong, be courageous, and be the good bit of our history, saving our safe haven by rejecting this application.
Well done, thank you very much. Right, can I just say thank you to the speakers for providing us with copies of their presentation prior to the meeting. Thank you very much. Right, next one is Barbara Marchant.
Right, I can't believe that I'm sitting here again speaking to the planning committee to reject this application. I did so in 1994 and it was rejected by public inquiry after an appeal by the developer, and again in 2006 because of destruction of the woodland, the traffic problems, the intrusion into the countryside, ecological damage and road safety issues, and the access to the site was inadequate. What's changed? Everything it was rejected on has deteriorated since. Why is it still on the housing allocation? I'd like some questions answered. Can you explain why, when the junction of Oakfield Way and Blackwell Farm Road was declared inadequate then and was a serious hazard to the school children, it is now considered no longer a safety issue? The school has doubled in size since then. How can highways, who realised that Blackwell Farm Road was already a huge traffic problem, objected correctly then, and now decide it's no longer a problem? We must have an explanation of their decision. How did highways come to the conclusion that the 75 parking spaces planned will only generate 16 extra journeys down the road? Have they been asked how this ridiculous calculation was made? The residents request an answer. They have little faith in highways' decisions since they placed a diversion sign during the closure of Blackwell Farm Road during roadworks, directing traffic down a bollarded, unmade footpath to a 10-foot-high railway bridge with a weight limit of 3 tonnes into Charlwoods Road. When challenged, highways declared, "It's a road on our map." Really? I also wish for an answer to the question, how can the developer widen the gateway to the site? We'll just knock down the wall to make it wider. That is private property on privately owned land. Who has asked the owner of the land if they may knock down the wall?
1 minute left.
It was unsuitable then, it's unsuitable now. How can contractors and HGVs possibly access the site, let alone the junction onto Blackwell Farm Road? You can't get in there without mounting the curb with an HGV. How do highways expect a donation of money from the developer to provide a bus lane on the A22 to mitigate the gridlock on Blackwell Farm Road, as the developers believe? We can't get out to access the A22. I have in my possession the covenants on the land donated in perpetuity for a hospital in 1932 by Lord Kindersley. One of them states that only dwellings to be built on the land must be for doctors, nurses and ancillary staff employed by Queen Victoria Hospital only. How can this development even be considered? It should be rejected again.
Thank you very much. Right. Okay, the third speaker, Isabelle Lindsay McCall.
No matter how many times the developer places another application, this proposed development remains totally inappropriate. And the fact that they have submitted deliberately misleading evidence in order to forcibly push it through is shameful. The biggest question I would like directly answered by Mid Sussex is regarding the bats. Since moving here only three years ago, we've spent summer evenings watching the bats dance overhead, fluttering backwards and forth to the woodland. I remind you of legislation that states you are breaking the law if you deliberately kill bats, destroy a breeding or resting place, or recklessly disturb a bat whilst it's in a place of shelter or protection. You have received numerous first-hand accounts of bats residing in the woodland over many years. Have the developers proved the bats do not inhabit the woodland? I find it insulting that they are providing bat boxes for a colony potentially destroyed by loss of habitat. I find it ironic that the boxes are being provided for a colony potentially destroyed by this development, and I find it laughably clumsy that by providing bat boxes proves they accept the current presence of bats. The developers have themselves proved this development is illegal. I'm reliably informed the clearing of this woodland will require 500 HGV loads, 1,000 trips just to clear it. The air pollution will be palpable. Toxic fumes breathed in by my 2-year-old daughter playing in our garden, which backs onto Oakfield Way. I strongly disagree with the suggestion by the planning officer that construction is so transient there will be no noise or pollution impact. Should this go ahead, I will measure and record all pollution and noise effects to take action accordingly. My beautiful ancient oak, estimated to be 400 years old, overhangs Oakfield Way and will soon be suitably protected, and I will be addressing any damage or disturbance. Speaking of trees, the suggestion that there will be a positive environmental impact by this development is astounding, and I would like to see the detailed report, its author, and by whom it was commissioned, since the developer has demonstrated they've no issue with untruths. My husband and I moved to East Grinstead from London because of this specific house, a quiet garden backing onto the woodland and a peaceful community. This development will destroy our haven. I worry about the physical and emotional safety of my little girl and the elderly residents if this development is approved. We feel disappointed and betrayed by Mid Sussex, going out of their way to move the goalposts to get this development approved. Environment and community be damned. We beg you, prove us wrong.
Thank you. Right, the next speaker is Julian Walker on behalf of the applicants.
Good afternoon. I'm here to speak on behalf of both the applicants of this site. Those applicants are the Queen Victoria Hospital Trust and Brookworth Homes. The proposal is for 30 dwellings comprising 18 3- and 4-bed houses and 12 1- and 2-bed flats. The site is allocated for approximately 40 dwellings in the Mid-Sussex local plan. Following extensive negotiations with officers and consultees over more than 2 years, there are now no objections from any statutory consultees to the proposals before you today. And the development brings with it a huge financial benefit to the Queen Victoria Hospital itself. We've negotiated with the Highways Authority extensively and they have now no objections to the proposals. We are aware that there are existing concerns about traffic in the area as a whole, but we can only resolve the concerns relating to our development itself, and we have done that successfully. Both surface water and foul drainage have been dealt with to the satisfaction of the consultee, and we have confirmation that there is capacity in the foul system for the development. The site is owned entirely by the Queen Victoria Hospital Trust, and therefore, with planning permission being granted, they will benefit from the funds when the site is sold. The income generated for the hospital will run to several £million, and that is in addition to any Section 106 monies that come forward for them as well. As you'll appreciate, a windfall of several £millions is a massive benefit to the NHS hospital, and this benefit is unique to this site. The site is allocated in the Mid-Sussex local plan, and so the principle of development is accepted. The allocation of this site inevitably means harm to the trees and ecology on the site, and this would have been clear and fully accepted when the allocation was made. We've negotiated with the council to reduce the housing numbers proposed to enable certain more significant trees to be retained. We've also negotiated with the council's ecologists to agree off-site mitigation for ecology, as well as a wide range of ecology features on site. It's worth stating that as well that Mid-Sussex local plan currently requires 30% affordable housing provision on every site, but the allocation policy refers to 40%. We have therefore agreed with officers that we will deliver 40% affordable housing on the site. You'll be aware of the recent written ministerial statement accompanying the new MPPF that says that the overturning of officers' recommendations should be rare and infrequent. We believe that there are very good reasons to support your officer's recommendation today, and we hope that you will agree. Because this is an allocated housing site with no objections from any statutory consultees, on a site that uniquely delivers substantial benefits to the hospital and will facilitate new capital projects and upgrades to a hugely important hospital and the largest local employer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, the next speaker is the ward councillor, Councillor Margaret Bly, and as I've said before, she isn't constrained by time, but obviously we would ask her to be succinct as possible.
Good afternoon. My name is Margaret Bly, and I'm both a town and district councillor for Ashplatts North Ward, where the current application before you today is situated. I'm here as the ward councillor to ask that the committee refuse this application for the many reasons so eloquently stated by the three residents, and the reasons contained in the many letters of objection to the plan that the council has received, setting out their various substantive reasons why this application should be refused by the committee today. Although I will not repeat all their objections, as I know you have a busy agenda, I feel that, as not only a ward councillor, but also a resident of the ward, and also as a past local authority governor of Blackwell Primary School, I have considerable first-hand knowledge of the area and the traffic conditions that exist along Blackwell Farm Road, which I believe must be the largest cul-de-sac in East Grinstead, as all cars must use this road. There is no alternative road, so all traffic to the proposed new site must use Blackwell Farm Road, unless, of course, they will be using the hospital's helipad. I therefore wish to put forward to the committee the reasons for my objection to the plan. First issue is highway safety. I would point out that Blackwell Farm Road has cars parked on both sides of the road and often on the pavement, as many of the homes along that road do not have either driveways or garages, which results in traffic only able to either drive without driveways or garages, which results in traffic only being able to use the central single lane, ducking and diving into space to allow passing. This busy road has a junior primary school, which as a past governor, I'm extremely pleased to say has become increasingly popular with the introduction of 2 classes per year, which has meant over the last 10 years the school has doubled its capacity to 420 pupils, which is excellent, but the increase in pupil numbers over recent years has also resulted in increased road usage by an increased number of parents, causing increased concerns over highway safety, particularly for the children that walk to school and have to cross the road. This plan before you today, and two other approved plans, one of which has been developed to the side of the school, namely Hilda Duke's Close, has 35 homes having been already built, and the second plan, awaiting development of 10 units, leads to an ever-increasing amount of traffic using the road, including goods and services, residents, hospital staff, school staff members, parents driving their children along this already busy road to and from school. I have worked out that taking into account the number of new residents that these new developments would create, at least an additional 300 traffic movements per day would be undertaken. Quite simply, this would create further, really significant highway safety issues, particularly during school times of the day, which have been extended due to the school having preschool and after-school activities. Quite frankly, it is already a nightmare driving along Blackwell Farm Road with double-sided parking, watching out for vehicles, children and pedestrians, wheelchair users trying to cross the road or cycling, which we all want our children to be able to do, but only if they can do so safely. I'm not sure what time of the day West Sussex undertook their survey, but I would invite them to return early morning or mid to late afternoon on any school day to see absolute traffic mayhem. Ask anyone who's driven down the road recently during those times. The usual reply is, it is a nightmare. No one who has first-hand knowledge of this road would say yes to at least 240 more traffic movements every day along that road, and the serious safety issues to our children and our residents this presents. I do not accept this development would not have an adverse effect on the highway issues as stated here today. Secondly, I object on environmental issues, which include the loss of significantly sized woodland, including 8 oak trees with tree preservation orders on them. The effect on bats, as already stated, and many other forms of wildlife that currently live in those woods, which may not be labelled as ancient woodland, but is adjacent to it and contains many beautiful trees, many of which are to be felled. In respect of the bats, new bait boxes have been put in place on the new site as required by law, but bats do not like bright lights, so I'm not sure how long they will remain, if indeed any bats move to the new box from the woods, when house lights, Christmas lights, spotlights are introduced to the new development. I agree with our tree officer in her email to Stuart Malcolm on the 13th of July 2021, when she stated that she could not support this scheme as it appears completely insensitive to its woodland setting. Thirdly, I object on the grounds of significantly increased noise and disturbance that this plan would cause to the neighbourhood. I would suggest that having to transport all the required building materials and machinery and vehicles to the site, and in addition, the large number of lorries required to dispose of waste material and the felled trees will have to be done by many lorries travelling along Blackwell Farm Road on what is in essence a single lane road with cars parked on both sides of the road. The increase in noise and disturbance will be very significant, regardless of what has been said here today, and I'm at a loss to understand how this can actually be done. Perhaps rather than lorries, they are planning to use helicopters rather than create mayhem by the use of the many lorries that will be required to travel along Blackwell Farm Road to and from the site. Although I agree that we need new houses in East Grinstead, this proposed plan before you today is, in my opinion, and the opinion of hundreds of residents unacceptable for the many reasons stated so eloquent by the residents here this afternoon. They, along with myself and many others, have written letters of objection to the council, feel very strongly that this plan should not be voted for until and unless the planners look further into highway safety. A coherent travel plan is put in place that would alleviate the already problematic traffic congestion and associated safety issues is provided by the developer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belsey. Right, I'd ask Stuart Malcolm if he wants to respond to any points that the speakers have made.
I'm happy to wait for questions through the members' chair, unless there's anything specific you'd want me to raise now. Obviously, covered some of the issues off in my initial presentation. Yeah. So happy to sort of respond to direct questions.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I'd invite members to contribute and ask questions, but please indicate. Might start with the other ward councillor, Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak first as ward councillor. I think first of all I'd like to say it's disappointing and unfortunate the West Sussex Highways could not attend today as requested. I mean, given the importance of traffic concerns, and this is a long-running application, it started in 2021, I think their presence would have been valuable in helping members and residents alike understand their recommendations. I really do. Why do I say that? Well, there have been many submissions from residents, including the Town Council, our MP, and very eloquently by fellow ward councillor Mrs Belsey, on how the real and lived experience of traffic and parking conditions in Blackwell Farm Road area do not reflect the applicant's survey findings. And I am going to ask a question, so bear with me. And submissions. Vehicle movements, parking and increased danger to pedestrians and road users are real. And most notably to the pupils at Blackwell Farm Primary School, a primary school, might I remind you, whose pupil numbers, as stated by Councillor Mrs Belsey, have grown significantly since 2006. And I know from my own experience of Blackwell Farm Road, I fully agree with these concerns, and the numerous times I have driven along the road, there has been double parking, i.e. either side of the road, resulting in the need for you or the oncoming traffic to give way, creating bottlenecks. So I don't quite understand how lorries are going to cope down that road. So coming to my first question, in September 2006, the refusal decision, and I have a copy here, included in West Sussex recommendations for refusal, and I comment here on the principle, not the specific scheme, but the principle, cited that it had had concerns that additional traffic using Blackwell Farm Road and the impact this would have on highway safety in the road, particularly outside the primary school. So we're talking about outside the primary school, and that was a reason for refusal by highways. Given the primary school has so significantly grown in terms of capacity and actual pupil numbers, and the increase that has generated in traffic movements at the start of the day and at the end of the day from parents, and given that West Sussex Highways acknowledge this traffic and parking issues in Blackwell Farm Road generally, and they have, as Mr Malcolm stated earlier, I can find no mention or consideration of road safety for primary school children outside that school in this report or the road safety audits commissioned by the applicant. So my question is, my first question, I reserve the right to come back later. I don't want to dominate this discussion, but I'll come listen to the other questions from members first. Why? Surely this is a major oversight. We're not talking teenagers, we're talking about primary school children, where there's double parking, a single flow of traffic where you have to give way at peak times, and parking and traffic volumes are a major issue. So why has that not been considered? I can't find any reference to it. I think it's very pertinent, and the principle was set in 2016 in their refusal. And I think it's a shame and a disappointment and unfortunate they're not here today to explain it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on that now or wait till?
Yeah, I'll come back now if that's
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Peacock raised a valid point, obviously, around the application that was refused back in 2006. I think, just to make clear, so there was a refused scheme back in 2006 that sought consent for 80 residential units on this site. So at the time that decision was made, the site was allocated. It was obviously allocated in the 2004 local plan for 40 units. The application that was submitted off the back of that, or following that, was for 80 residential units. So I think it was fair to say that was well beyond what the intention was of the allocation. The allocation says approximately 40, but I think to go up to 80 was a hell of a lot more than the intention. So I think it's important to differentiate between that application that was refused back in 2006 and what's before members today, which is for 30 units. So that's the difference between the two applications. I think it's also important to point out the difference in what the development plan policies are. So back in 2006, we had the local plan primarily, and the West Sussex structure plan would have been in force at the time. But now we've got the development plan, which is the district plan, and the East Grinstead neighbourhood plan as well as site allocations DPD. So there's a different policy structure to assess the application against, as well as the material planning consideration of the NPPF. Now the NPPF, which is the particular passage, is referenced in the report on, or I can't say a page number, so I'll give you a paragraph number in just a second. Paragraph 12.42, which, and I'll just read it out for everyone's benefit in case you can't locate it quickly. So the local highway authority does not consider that the proposal would have an unacceptable impact on highway safety or result in severe cumulative impacts on the operation of the highway network. Therefore, it's not contrary to the NPPF. So that's the assessment based on the material consideration of the assessment against the NPPF, which Highways Authority, that's the test, basically, to make whether something's acceptable in highways terms or not. And the professional view of highways officers of West Sussex, who, as you noted, are aware of the local conditions, you know, and officers know, and members will note that it's accepted that there's a parking issue, a safety issue around Blackwell, around the primary school. But it's important to come back to what's before members today, an application for 30 units in the context of the NPPF and the development plan. There isn't considered to be such an additional impact on the highway network that would warrant the failure of the test of the application against the NPPF.
Could I come, with respect, could I come back and then ask a follow-up question as well? Well, first of all, I did say at the start it was the principle, not the volume. I think we understand the volume of the houses under application. It's the principle. So, secondly, I don't think we would expect the adoption of the district plan or the DPD to necessarily undermine road safety. And in the last 16 years, there's been a great focus on road safety. Certainly outside schools, a great focus on that. So I'm surprised by that. And I come back to the point, if your comment is that the position on road safety in the DPD and highways position is down to their modelling data of number of trips a day, is that relevant? Because is that suitable, bearing in mind the amount of traffic that is down that road, and the fact that I can find no comment looking at the safety of children accessing the school immediately on the road outside the school. I can't. It's down to, from what I understand, I'm happy to be corrected, it's down to, basically the assessment is down to trips per hour, which I think is 16 at peak, I think. That's my understanding. In all the documentation, I can see no analysis of the risk to pedestrians and particularly young children outside that school. So my second question is, then moving on to road safety audits submitted only cover the immediate area of Oakfield Way and the proposed development itself. Given that highways do acknowledge the traffic and parking issues, the increase in pupils and the already approved application for 10 affordable dwellings at the junction of Blackwell Farm Road and Holteye, with its new access onto Blackwell Farm Road, surely in this background it is relevant. You know, why wasn't a wider audit carried out? It's okay saying, well, technically our numbers say it's not relevant, but surely in this background with the public concern and the real experiences that many of the councillors and residents do experience, that should have been done. And I realise you don't work for West Sussex Highways. That's why they should have been here today to explain that. It's unacceptable in my mind. This has been going on for over 2 years, this application. It's not new. So I'm sorry, I just, it's a critical issue.
Yeah, I think I can appreciate the fact that you do feel very strongly about West Sussex being here today. The only comment I would make is that this application would have normally gone to the other planning committee, and they would have not expected West Sussex, and that, I believe that is the reason that West Sussex are not here. They requested, as you say, fairly late on. Under normal circumstances, they would be at this committee, but that is one of the reasons why I believe they're not in attendance. Would that be correct?
It is in front of this committee, Chairman.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but this is why, until they were asked at the last minute, that they would normally expect to be here, but anyway, yeah, sorry, do you any further points you want to raise, or do you want to?
I've got a few other questions, but I'll leave that for
Okay,
later.
fine. Right, Councillor Sweatman.
Thank you, Chairman. Some very good comments been made so far. I actually visited the site. I couldn't make the Monday site visit, because I had issues with my car. But I did visit the site. I think it was Wednesday or Tuesday. It was about 3 o'clock on school time when they were kicking out, leaving school. It was absolutely horrendous. It is a one-way street, and it took me ages to get up there. I was very concerned about some kids running across the road. The parents were obviously there, but it was just unbelievable. The point is, you've got hospital residents parking outside their houses down Blackwell Farm Road. You've got hospital workers parking there, and it's I wish members could have seen that school. I've never seen anything like it. It's ridiculous. One of the issues was that this application was refused in 2006. So Highways are already admitting back in 2006 that there's an unacceptable increase in traffic using Blackwell Farm Road. And also goes on to say, on page 14 of our report, the loss of some trees of the high amenity value and lack of infrastructure being secured. Now, I'd like to ask the officer, and I was on the committee, that in particular I refused, although it went through, was the affordable houses at the bottom of Blackwell Farm Road. I was seriously concerned then about the traffic issues. Those houses have still got permission and have not yet been built. I don't think an account has been made on the increase on traffic. It's not just the top end of Blackwell Farm Road, it's the whole of that road that is an issue. And on that committee, previous committee, what I was just talking about, I also did raise about junction improvements on the bottom of Blackwell Farm Road and the junction the A264. Now, myself the other Tuesday trying to get out that junction on, it was quite horrendous. There's a huge amount of traffic using that A264 to come into the town and going out of the town there. And obviously that didn't happen, but I do have serious concerns about that. I would, just one more issue I would like to ask Stuart, the case officer, let other members speak. But in our update sheet, the tree officer, going back, I can't remember the date, probably 2006, had serious issues with the trees. And as she states on page 59 of the report, this scheme is better than the proposed I originally commented on, albeit with many of the same issues that are raised in my comments on the 13th of the 7th, 21. So there's a huge amount of issues that even the tree officer doesn't agree with those trees. I just can't even remember that an application we've had to cut down a load of trees to put a development on. And in bearing in mind, we're talking about traffic issues. Nowadays, houses have probably got more than 2 cars per household. So I don't think highways have taken that into account. I just think highways got this wrong. And, you know, so certainly with the trees, the tree officers, I just said, has still got serious issues of what she's mentioned before. So I'll leave it there, Chair, and allow other members to speak and come back if I may.
Do you want to come back on?
If I could, Chair, I think now would be a good time just to come back on a couple of the points raised by the 2 members that have spoken, if that's okay. So I think I'll just sort of start off by just reiterating the point that the site is allocated. The site is part, so I was talking about the development plan, what constitutes the development plan now, but the key development plan policy is that this, you know, for the council, is that this site shall be developed for approximately 40 dwellings. And obviously we've got an application before us now for 30 units on part of that site. So I think that's the starting point in terms of the decision-making process, that planning, the adopted planning policy of this council is that this site shall be developed for housing. And that affects both the salient points that the 2 members have raised already about the impact on the trees, as well as the, sort of the broader highways issues, in that the specific allocation requires that the access shall be down Oakfield Way, and as a result down Blackwell Farm Road and out into the wider highway network. So that's the planning policy of the council, and obviously it's not before members today. Not suggesting you're thinking this anyway, but it's obviously not for members today to revisit the allocation. But it's important to stress that that's the planning policy for the council. Just on the tree officer comments just raised by Councillor Sweatman, yeah, I haven't got a plan of what was put forward back in 2006. Often we'll revisit plans for a previously rejected scheme when we present cases to members, but because it was quite a while ago. I don't think that, and we know that it's for 80 units, that I don't think the actual site plan for that would have been of great benefit. But I think it's fair to say that getting 80 units into this site would have been cramming quite a few units in. So I think the impact on the trees would have been far more significant than what's before members now. And obviously, just in terms of the broader point about the tree officer comments, I wouldn't really expect the tree officer to be able to support any type of residential development on this. Bear in mind, the remit is to comment on the tree impact of a development. I think the important thing to stress here is that through the assessment process, we at officer level have managed to negotiate a scheme that has an impact that we're comfortable with to support. And I mentioned in the presentation that as a result of that, that means that the majority of category A trees are retained on site-wise at 16 out of 17. And just going back to the point about the schools, or the school I should say, sorry, I think it's important to make perfectly clear that West Sussex Highways will be aware that the school is located there. Reference is made to it in their comments, that obviously in the full consultee comments in Appendix B, but if paragraph 12.39, for example, talks about the impact on the surrounding highway network and talks about Blackwell Farm Road serving a number of residential dwellings, the primary school and a nursery/children's centre. That same paragraph also makes reference to the fact they've seen the site, they've done previous visits to the vicinity for other applications that have been before the council in the recent past, and they're aware of the level of on-street parking and the issues, particularly around school collection time, as Councillor Sweatman specifically picked up on following his visit. And it comes back to the NPPF requirement, which is set out in paragraph 12.42, that West Sussex Highways, you know, the professional officers who are aware of the allocation, the local road conditions, any local issues, that they don't think that the proposal will result in an unacceptable impact on highway safety or result in severe cumulative impacts on the operation of the highway network. And neither do they require any additional survey work to sort of reaffirm that conclusion. They've made clear they're happy with the timings of the road safety audit work, any parking surveys. They're happy with the methodologies that obviously best practice they'll have followed particular criteria to come to those conclusions. And you know, these issues have been flagged to West Sussex Highways, and no further information is required to come to that conclusion. I think that's all. Thanks, Chairman.
Yeah. Sorry you're having to defend West Sussex Highways in their absence, but as you can appreciate, members obviously are very concerned. Councillor Sweatman has got a follow-up question.
Sorry, very quickly, Chairman. Question, Stuart. The public open space is being taken out and is not being transferred for the council to look after. Who's going to be responsible for that and the pond? And equally, being a bit flippant, why couldn't the developers, instead of, and it's the highways that is the most contentious issue, why couldn't they punch the road for that development, if it's to go ahead, out through into Stone Quarry, through the hospital grounds? That would alleviate this extra impact on the Blackwell Farm. Just two questions there. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so just on the latter point, I think I touched on it a moment ago, but the EG8 policy requirement is that the access shall be through Oakfield Way. So the site allocation requires access through Oakfield Way to the west and, like I said, down through Blackwell Farm Road. And obviously the application before members is for such an access. And you know, that's been assessed by Highways. I won't reiterate the points I've just previously made. In terms of the open space, just to be clear, so the original policy, there was a requirement that there should be a transfer of open space. I wasn't sure if that was what you meant. So that's why I put this plan up before you. So this shows the application site with the red line and the BNG offsetting area within the green line. Now, part of that land in the green area was, I assume, the intention behind the transfer of open space back from the 2004 local plan policy. There's no accompanying plan to indicate where that land is, but Mid Sussex, as an authority, haven't shown an interest in taking on responsibility for that open space. So in terms of the BNG area, that will be managed by the applicant. And we'll secure management of that through various conditions. We will monitor that as the enforcing authority through monitoring fees that will come through the legal agreement. And then in terms of the open space on the site, I'll just go back to a site plan. Yeah, this will be just managed by the applicant, so likely to be a management company that will be formed to manage any open space that is within the site. So we will, as the authority, enforce any requirements on the BNG land to the east, but any open space within the site will be managed by the applicant. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, if you go to any of the 14 primary schools in East Grinstead, or anywhere in this district, or probably anywhere in this country, frankly, but certainly in East Grinstead, between 8:30 and 9:15 and 2:30 and 3:30, it is chaos, it is madness. I live near Houseford Park School, and it's madness. You go to the Meads, you go to Balderwin's Hill, it's the same. Everybody knows that. Can I just ask, please, the planning officer, Mr. Malcolm, with the traffic generation, and a lot's been mentioned, obviously, by the neighbours, and quite rightly so, potential concerns if this is approved, and particularly with construction traffic. Now, usually that's covered by a construction management plan. So I don't know if you can provide any clarity or reassurance such that, for instance, if it was approved, could there be a clause in that construction management plan so there would be no lorry journeys between the two crucial, critical times for delivery and collection of children at that school, namely between 8:15 and 9 o'clock and 2:30 and 3:30, because that sounds logical. And I think it might just provide a bit of clarity and certainly reassurance if you've had those discussions, and if you haven't, could you?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't have the precise details on what the construction management proposals are on that. It is obviously, as you picked up on, it is reserved by condition. If members want to, these sort of things would normally come out in a construction management plan, and I would fully expect it to any plan that comes before us in the event of a planning permission and the discharge of condition for construction management plan to set that out precisely. I think if members were particularly minded to ensure that is given sort of primary consideration, which I'm sure it will be anyway, then I'm sure we can add an informative, if not wording to the condition itself, to avoid those peak hours around the primary school. So I'm in members' hands on that.
Are you content? Sorry, did you have a follow-up question? Or?
No, I just wanted clarity on that, because
okay.
I think that's an important point, and I think certainly that's I would feel that the construction management plan would need that to be that strong, and it provides total clarity and a lot of reassurance on that particular point. But I would say on the site visit on Monday, I mean, I was there from 9:30 until about 1 o'clock, and the traffic up and down that road and Haggenden Close was fine, absolutely fine. I know you would have gone there at 2:30, 3 o'clock, and it would have been chaos. But for those 3.5 hours, it was completely clear.
Sorry, Councillor Reeves, did you
Yes.
turn yourself off?
I don't know. Might have done with my bit of paper. So, yes, thank you, Chair. For once, I agree with Councillor Sweatman, which is a rare thing. I think highways have got this wrong completely.
I'm taken aback.
Yes, I think they've got it wrong. I hear the traffic survey was carried out one day after lockdown. Did I hear that right? That's incredible if that's true, and really needs to be redone. I'd also be concerned about West Sussex are bringing in a school streets programme. What happens if this becomes a school street and nobody's allowed to pass that school during those hours? That would really wreak havoc. I could raise various questions like, why so many parking spaces? Why 18 extra parking spaces, which means you have to fell far more trees and there's less of a noise barrier to protect future residents from the hum of the generators in the hospital. This is indeed a narrow road and a very large cul-de-sac, so that's what we all have realised. Cycle parking, there should be 48, there aren't, I don't know how many there are. The exit from the existing row of garages is surely going to be dangerous because there's no visibility. Has that been somehow addressed? Public transport, I thought about going up there on Monday to the site visit by bus. It was not achievable even for 10 o'clock, so it's a very car-dependent area. The biggest thing for me is the trees. It's a huge issue. Contravention of DP 37, I can't get round that. Bats, apparently one tree is marked as a possible roosting bat habitat. Again, not very credible. And there's no future safeguarding of trees. If you look at 8, 9 and 10, the houses, they are so near trees. And as we all know as councillors, people apply to us for subsidence, fell my tree because of subsidence. They also come to us because they don't like leaves. They want us to knock an oak tree down because they don't like leaves. There is no protection of trees once they're that close to a house, however old the tree is, however new the house. People seem to have a right to take these things down. So, yeah. No solar panels on the houses, no air source heat pumps or solar panels on any of the drawings. Very strange. Thank you.
Want me to come back?
Please do.
A few questions there to go through. Just to confirm about the day after the COVID lockdown point. So yeah, that was the road safety audit that was carried out the day after a lifting of COVID restrictions. I think it's important to note that a road safety audit is really designed to look at local road conditions as opposed to a traffic survey, which is sort of more number counting. Obviously, number counting could be swayed by any COVID restrictions that might have been in place at the time, and that would be an issue for West Sussex to raise. But just to confirm, it's the audit itself that took place the day after the lifting of restrictions, and that's a site sort of circumstance type issue. Excessive parking, yeah, it's noted in the report, paragraph. I'll get there in a moment. Well, I'll tell you the figure. There's 6 additional car parking spaces, which is in excess of the West Sussex requirements, parking standards, that is. But I think in this case, officers are happy with such a provision. It's not something we've asked for at officer level, but I think bearing in mind the issues raised about the local highways conditions and issues with parking, I think it is probably, if anything, sensible to have slightly more parking provided on site here to help minimise the likelihood of any overspill onto the local highway network and adding to that issue that has been talked about already. Cycle parking, that will be a condition of any planning permission that's granted. That will need to come back for officers for approval, both at location and number. That would obviously be in accordance with West Sussex requirements. The trees to be lost, we've touched on already, and I've sort of referenced what the tree officer has said. I think in terms of the future pressure, I think officers are in a position where we're comfortable that the trees that are retained in those locations shown before you won't create that issue where there's immediately future pressure to fell them or lop them or prune them, whatever it is. So we're comfortable with the layout that's before members in that respect, to prevent that being an issue. The bat survey, yeah, I mean, maybe I should have made this clear at the start, so apologies, but yeah, bats have been identified on site. You've heard from the local residents that bats are present, and the ecology surveys identify that, but the ecology surveys submitted also go through the ecological hierarchy of mitigation, compensation, etc. And we've got robust conditions in place to ensure that any disruption to bats are compensated for. There's compensation mitigation within the site itself, and obviously the BNG area to the east will help mitigate any impact of the on-site works. I think that's all. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. I've listened very carefully to the representations by the local residents, obviously feel very strongly about this issue. I've also listened carefully to the 2 ward councillors. If I stand back and look dispassionately at this, it is a site which has been allocated in the plan for development. If we look at some of the issues, probably the main issue is the traffic issue. There are probably somewhere on the Blackwell Road, Farm Road area, about 500 properties. I think that's probably, I've been told that. 36 is not going to be a significant, I mean, there is a terrible traffic problem in that road, but I don't think 36 will make an additional significant effect on what is already a very bad situation. Why, if that was the case, why was the school allowed to double its size? No, there is a problem here with parking of cars and access through there. So probably my main thing there is that by having only 30 houses, rather than as against the sort of overall number of properties on this particular cul-de-sac, Blackwell Farm cul-de-sac, is probably less than significant. Secondly, In terms of the primary school, I agree with Councillor Whitaker that perhaps, you know, during the peak periods of sort of 8:30 to 9 o'clock and then 3 o'clock to 3:30 in the afternoon, when there's a drop-off and pick-up at the school, is probably to have something in the traffic management plan to sort of stop construction traffic moving past there. I mean, in my particular village, we've got three form-entries for primary school, 630 kids, right up by a busy crossroads, with nowhere really to park the cars, and it's absolutely mayhem at 9 o'clock in the morning, and that's probably true, as Councillor Whitaker said, about a lot of schools in and around the country, really, as a whole. In terms of the woodlands, well, I visited the site on last Monday. I agree there are one or two sort of oak trees which are going to be preserved. Quite a lot of the area is sort of self-seeded, sort of scrappy shrubland, if you like, made worse by having piles of tin cans and glass bottles and whatever, which makes the place look very, very untidy and very, very messy. So there is obviously some sort of need there to sort of tidy up the whole of that area. So my thoughts there are that you've got obviously local opposition, but you always have local opposition to development wherever you go, and that is my experience as dealing with planning applications. But I've heard, you know, very carefully what the strength of their feelings. I'm in two minds about this particular application, but that's my situation.
Thank you. Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and keep this very quick and short. I think that the school traffic issue is really for another place. That's all we've really spoken about this afternoon. We should be talking about a planning application on a particular site. I'm very disturbed about the report made by the tree warden. I'm a member of the Woodland Trust. I think there's some very poor quality trees in there in that woodland that we saw. I know a lot of them will come down anyway by this development. It's not been managed properly, that particular site. And so I think that there will be an improvement overall in the future. In fact, I belong to a friends group which actually deals with this sort of issue, and that's done in conjunction with the Mid Sussex District Council, which seem to be on board with that particular site. So we get down to the fact that we're now talking about 30 homes instead of 80 or even 40. So I think this is an acceptable application for this site, and really at this time I think I should be moving a recommendation that is being proposed or recommended and push it there.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chairman. Looks like I'll be the last speaker. It is a follow-up, a new question. Well, I would say, obviously, Councillor Jackson, Mr. Malcolm, state that this is the principle of development is established. But obviously, that is not a guarantee it's going to be approved. We're here to scrutinise the detail. That's what we're here today. Traffic and safety, I believe, are key issues. It goes against what highways say, but that's not the first time that in the history of Mid-Sussex, we've had key issues, and we know that well in East Grinstead with the A22. Coming to the question, obviously in paragraph 12.34, it states that in the 2004 policy, the inclusion of a roundabout and a lay-by have now been dropped, as they are not required under today's policy and guidance. Can I ask why? I apologise to Mr. Malcolm, it's going back to traffic, and the reason for that question, surely, given Highways' acknowledgement of the traffic and parking issues, in the very least, a roundabout would have facilitated and expedited more efficient traffic flows. It's at the end of, basically at the end of the cul-de-sac, that people moving in to collect their children, the natural movements into that cul-de-sac, this junction is at the end of that cul-de-sac. Surely a roundabout would have facilitated and expedited more efficient traffic flows, i.e. turning around at the end of the cul-de-sac road users would have been greatly simplified instead of having to perform U-turns and three-point turns. Surely that would have been a better improvement, a relevant improvement to the efficiency of traffic in that road, that cul-de-sac, even if the position is that the heavy traffic and congestion is at between 8:30 and 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Surely that would have expedited the situation, and there was a reason why that was included, and that was included for 40 houses, not 30. So I apologise to asking another traffic question, but I do think it's, apart from ecology, I do think it's very important. Thank you.
Sorry. Thanks. It's a fair question, don't worry. So I think I tried to sort of touch on it in my presentation, but what's changed is obviously, go back to the date, because it was this policy, well, I say it was drafted in 2004, it was adopted in 2004, so it was probably drafted, I'd say at least a year before. So at the time, the requirement based on best practice for highways design was to incorporate a mini roundabout and have a lay-by for this level of development for, for the 40 units. What changed was that, I can't get into the technical details of why it changed, unfortunately, but all we need to know is that it did change in 2007 with the publication of Manual for Streets, which became a material planning consideration that influences decision makers, and based on the policies and guidance, or the guidance I should say, within Manual for Streets, that changed the thinking of probably all sorts of highways design things, not just this sort of type of development or this type of feature, I should say. And obviously it comes back to the point that we always make, is that decisions get made in accordance with the development plan, unless material planning considerations indicate otherwise. In this case, it's a material planning consideration that the Manual for Streets document, which influences highways thinking, is a material consideration that would indicate a decision other than in accordance with the development plan, which states the roundabout and the lay-by. So that's what changed. Why it changed, I can't answer, but we do know that it changed, and that's why it's that's why highways aren't insisting on those provisions now. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this is a classic case of emotion against planning law and policy, as I see it. As has been mentioned, this is an allocated site, effectively twice. It was allocated in 2004 and a safe policy in the district plan 2018, which I don't actually think has been mentioned. It's in the built-up area boundary. It's a simple extension to the existing built-up area boundary. It's been in a long time in pre-planning. I think the design has evolved over 3 years, and I think it's a nice, what I would call old-fashioned design. Simple, some terraced houses, 2.5-storey blocks of flats. This is a critical joint venture between Queen Victoria Hospital and the developer. You could say it's innovative, and the NHS is crying out for this sort of innovation. There will be over a £2 million capital receipt that comes into the hospital, and I know through their chief executive, who attended a recent East Grinstead Town Council meeting, that they have advanced plans for reinvesting that money into operating facilities at the hospital. And that's crucial to make. And the Speaker, Mr. Walker, made that particular point. So I think it's just worth reiterating that point. The Town Council, in their Neighbourhood Plan 2016, Policy SS6, completely support Queen Victoria Hospital as a medical provision. In terms of planning, that's a policy which is relevant because it was adopted in 2016. This capital receipt supports that objective of supporting the medical sustainability of the hospital. Infrastructure contributions, nobody's mentioned that, nearly £500,000, which is over £16,000 a unit, which is significant. Road safety audit, every point has been covered and signed off. I know there's been extensive debate by my fellow councillors, and I respect that, but we could be sitting here discussing traffic all day, and I don't think we want to. But all the road safety audit points have been covered. I do think the point about the construction management plan, no deliveries at all in or out between the hours of 8 and 9 and 2:30 and 4 o'clock would be crucial, just to reiterate that point. But in overall terms, I support the motion by Councillor Yates. Second that.
Thank you. I mean, I wished I had £1 for every time we sat here and queried the decision of county highways. But the system is that they've got to look at the incremental effect of additional traffic movements, not what goes on at present, which we may not agree with it, but that is the way the system works, that is the legal requirement, and that highways can only turn down a plan if the incremental effect is very severe, or sorry, not very severe, is severe. I think we all agree it's an extremely high bar for them to have to jump over, but that is the way it is at the moment. I've got every sympathy with the comments about the extra funding it's going to bring into the hospital, but I mean, and I think we've all got sympathy with that, but it isn't actually a planning issue per se. So, you know, we have got an extremely difficult decision to make, but I think we do need to be very clear about the effect of any rejection, bearing in mind the various decisions about the officers. Yes, the tree officer certainly has some reservations, but that was based on an earlier plan. And I do think it's very unfortunate. In fact, at one point I was minded to move that we actually adjourn the meeting and ask for the West Sussex Highways officer to attend a future meeting for us to make a decision then, because I do think it's put an unreasonable strain on our planning officer having to speak on behalf of West Sussex. Stephen King would like to make a few comments.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to try and draw some of this together, I won't go through everything because I think the issues have had a very good airing, but I think it is important, as Stuart and the Chair has said, that the starting point is that this site is allocated for residential development in the development plan. So that is the starting point. And flowing from that, there will be an inevitable consequence, as we've said, about impacts on trees and traffic at the site. But that all flows from the starting point that this site is allocated for development. So we have to begin there. In terms of highways, as members will know from all the training events we've attended and so on, it is all about the evidence that's submitted, and the evidence that we have that's been assessed by the Highway Authority is that the proposal wouldn't result in a severe impact, and it's about the impact of this development, so the extra 30 houses. Will that have a severe impact on the local highway network? And the clear advice from the Highway Authority is that it will not, and that's why they're not objecting to the scheme. And again, as members will know, where we refuse schemes, applicants do have the right to appeal against those decisions, and we have to be in a position to properly and robustly defend those decisions. And when it comes to highways, if we don't have the support of the Highway Authority, it becomes very, very difficult to defend decisions that go against what the Highway Authority are recommending. The views of the Highway Authority will always be given significant weight by Planning Inspectorate. So I think it is important to appreciate that and note that. And the other thing I think that's important is that when we're looking at the development plan, it's read as a whole. So you don't have to have complete compliance with every single policy that's relevant. So in this case, as we've said, we acknowledge there's impact on trees on the site. That's inevitable. But when you read the plan as a whole, we feel that this proposal does comply with the development plan. There's no technical objections from consultees relating to highways and ecology. And therefore, when you look at the planning policy position, the benefits of the scheme, the housing that's provided, 40%, which will be affordable, which is more than you would get on a regular site. It all leads to the recommendation that's before the committee today. So I hope that's helpful in just drawing some of it together.
Thank you. Right, we have Councillor Bates has proposed, Councillor Whittaker seconded. Can we move to the vote, please? Right, we have the result. 6 votes in favour, 4 against and 1 abstention. Therefore, the recommendation is carried. And I will read the recommendation for the anyone that is watching online. It's recommended that planning permission is granted subject to the conditions listed in Appendix A and the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement to secure the required infrastructure contributions and the necessary affordable housing contribution. Recommendation B, if a satisfactory planning obligation has not been completed by the 16th of February 2024, it is recommended that the application be refused at the discretion of the Assistant Director of Planning and Sustainable Economy for the following reasons. The proposal fails to provide the required affordable housing or the infrastructure contributions. The application therefore conflicts with policies DP20, DP31 and EG8 of the Mid-Sussex District Plan and the Mid-Sussex Supplementary Planning Documents, affordable housing and development and infrastructure contributions. Right, thank you very much.
Sorry, Chairman, I do apologise. Point of order. I'm just checking that the comments and the suggestions of Councillor Bates and Councillor Whittaker about the timing of within the construction management plan and the movements of traffic to do with that will be included specifically in the conditions. I apologise for interrupting.
No,
you.
that's fine, and that is my understanding that those will be taken into account and, where possible, taken into the conditions.
Yeah, I'll look to reword condition 8 again, which has already been reworded by the update sheet, but we'll reword that again to get those specific timings in there.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Right, I would suggest we have a 10-minute recess, so if we can reconvene at 10 to 4, please. reconvene, please. Move on to item 6, recommended for refusal, DM 231160, Contago Safety, Waremaster House, Malthouse Lane, Hurstpier Point. Stephen is here to make the presentation himself.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just before I get into the presentation, just drawing your attention to the update sheet. A couple of things on there. So, received one further letter of objection, and there's an addition to the report, adding an extra paragraph just to refer to the proposed allocation of the land immediately to the north of the site in the submission draft of the district plan. But that's it in terms of updates, Chairman.
Cool.
In terms of the planning application itself, the application site, it's on the west side of Malthouse Lane, just outside Burgess Hill. And the application seeks planning permission for amendments to the existing buildings on the site and the construction of a warehouse building with offices and associated facilities, car parking, cycle parking and landscaping at Contigo Safety Wear. So this is the application site here, outlined in red on the western side, Malthouse Lane. Just in terms of the submission draft district plan and the update that I referred to on the update sheet, this is the application site just down here where the cursor is. As you can see, it's proposed in that plan a significant allocation for residential and associated facilities on land to the north. But as the report also says, in terms of the status of that plan, it's at such an early stage still. There's no weight to be given to the emerging plan at this stage. And again, just in terms of what else is around the site, this plan shows the bridleway network in the green there, so it's bridleway immediately to the north of the site, the purple public footpaths, and the red building there is the listed building, the heritage asset that's referred to in the committee report. And just an aerial photo to give it some more context. So Burgess Hill is just to the east. It's the Jane Murray Way runs around Burgess Hill. So this is Malthouse Lane, the application site, and this is the battery storage facility that's also referred to in the report. So as you can see, the site is bounded by fields to the north, west, and across to the east. Nearest residential property to the site is just located here. That's again referred to in the committee report, and also as referenced in the report, and I'll come to that later, to the extent planning permission for a commercial development on this site here, immediately to the south. So in terms of the planning application that's before the committee today, it's a full planning application, say for predominantly warehouse building, but with other facilities on land to the west of the existing building. So this is the footprint of the proposed new building. The application also proposes the removal of a small section here of the existing commercial buildings on the site to facilitate vehicular access into the warehouse across here. So just a bit more detail. This is the proposed site plan. So you can see the shape of the building there, outlined in the grey. The dotted area is the section of the existing building to be removed to provide the vehicular access into the building there. Car parking located to the west. The site would use the existing access from Malthouse Lane that members would have used on the site visit on Monday. So that's the existing access, and existing car parking for the site located here and across here. And then at the moment the access road comes round and then provides access into the battery storage facility to the south. So the application would allow for the expansion of the site for an existing occupier, or the existing occupier as set out in the section 10.5 of the committee report. So these are the existing elevations of the building, buildings that are there on the eastern side of the site. So single story, timber clad, shallow pitch roofs buildings. That's the existing floor plans, so office, small office section, and the majority of the buildings in yellow used for warehouse storage. So these are the proposed elevations of the new building. So as you can see, a two-storey building. So that's the east elevation, south elevation. The details of the size, etc., are set out in section 10 of the committee report. The external materials are a composite cladding. Details of the final materials to be agreed, but it's composite cladding. Dark green colour is what's being put forward. Proposed north and west elevations of the building. That's the proposed floor plans of the existing building, just showing the small section of the existing warehouse that would be removed. And then this is the ground floor plan of the proposed new build. So the majority of the building is the warehouse. This is full height to the ceiling, and then it's this element of the building that has the other sections, various offices, staff rooms, etc. So this section of the building is two-storey internally. So as you can see, that's the upper floor of the proposed building. In terms of heights and how it relates to the existing buildings on the site, this is a section through the site. So these are the existing buildings here on the right. The dotted line at the top there, purple line, is the existing ground level, which is, as you can see, is at a higher level than the site here. So it's proposed that the building, the finished floor level in the red, would be cut into the land, but you can see that the proposed building would still be substantially higher than the existing buildings on the site, and again the details of that are in the committee report. It's referred to in the report, so I thought it would be helpful to show this as well. This is the footprint and layout of the previously approved scheme to the southeast and south of this site. So these are the existing buildings that I've just shown. This is the application site for the new warehouse up here. So this is a building that's been approved, a mix of research and development and offices. So two-storey building with car parking to the front and rear. In terms of the elevations of that building, two-storey, timber clad, timber columns, glazing to the rear. That permission's extent, I think that runs out in October, but that's previously approved, and the reasons for that again are set out in the committee report, but I thought it'd be helpful just to show what has been approved around the site as well. Just some photos that those that are on the site visit will recognise. So these are just taken at the entrance to the site. That's looking up Malthouse Lane, and that's looking down towards the south. Malthouse Lane, this is stood directly opposite the access, looking at the existing buildings, and that's the access into the site to the south that has that extant permission. Views within the site. So this is the location of the proposed warehouse building here. You can see to the south of the site the battery storage facility, and just some views from within the site. Again, these are the existing buildings within the site. That's at the western side looking up. So you've got the bridleway runs along here, and the application site is back here. So if I go back to the proposed layout plan, in terms of the issues, they're set out in the committee report. So the legal framework, as we'll know, that's set out in section 11. The principal issues, I'll go through them just very briefly because they are set out. In terms of the principle of the development, that's dealt with in paragraph 12.2 onwards. The site is in the countryside, so the starting point is policy DP12 in the district plan. That acknowledges that the rural economy will be supported by other policies within the district plan that permit small-scale development, and that then feeds into policies DP1 and in particular DP14 in the district plan. And as you see in the report in paragraph 12.8, that's set out that does allow for new small-scale economic development in the countryside. In your office's view, for the reasons in the report, because of the size and scale of the building, we feel that on balance it won't maintain the rural and landscape character of this part of the district, and it's not a small-scale development that's envisaged under policy DP14. In terms of the previous planning permission that I referred to, we saw the slides for in this location here. The history relating to that is set out in paragraph 12 of the report, and you'll see that the history of that goes back a long way, in that there was a building on the site previously that had consent to be demolished and replaced with a commercial building. The demolition took place, and that original consent remained extant, and it followed on from that planning permission was more recently granted for the two-storey building that we saw on the slides. Coalescence, we don't consider that the proposal would result in any coalescence between Burgess Hill and Hurstpit Point. In terms of the impacts on the heritage assets, as we saw on the slide, Kent's Farmhouse, Grade 2 listed building, is some 200 metres from the application site, and you'll see that the Conservation Officer objects to the scheme and is of the view that the scheme would cause some harm to the setting of that listed building. Officers agree with that, certainly feel it's at the lower range of that less than substantial harm as referred to in the MPPF, and you've got to weigh any harm against the benefits of the scheme, and the benefits in this case are an economic benefit to the rural economy, the local firm, etc., and that does attract weight, so that's a balance to be carried out. Design matters, that's paragraphs 12.34 onwards of the report. We feel in its own right the building is an acceptable design, it's not objectionable per se, it's a concern about the overall scale of the building and its consequent impact on the countryside. In relation to sustainable design, the scheme would allow for PV panels on the roof, would be a modern building, obviously properly insulated, etc. And so there's no concerns in terms of the sustainability of the building itself. You'll see there's no objections in relation to ecology on the site, but the other main issue relates to access and transport. You'll see, again, there's no objection from the Highway Authority to the proposal. From the site visit, you'll have seen that the sight lines are good, both to the north and the south. And there's no issue in terms of safety and the use of that access. Drainage, that's dealt with on paragraphs 12.6.8 of the report. In terms of neighbour amenity, as I mentioned, the nearest property is up to the southeast, 115 metres or so away. You'll see that the Environmental Health Officer has no objection to the scheme, subject to conditions regarding the hours of use, and that we have no reason to disagree with that assessment. So in terms of the overall conclusion, it's your officer's view that the scheme does conflict with the development plan because of the scale of the proposed development and the less than substantial harm to the setting of the listed building that we've referred to. There are no technical objections to the application in relation to highways matters, drainage or ecology. We do recognise on this one, and you have probably picked up in the conclusion, the word balance, and I do think that this is quite a finely balanced case in respect of the benefits of the scheme in terms of the rural economy, the benefits to the existing firm on the site. It is in the countryside, but it isn't a site that's in the middle of nowhere with no other development around it, which we've seen from the aerial photos. So overall, the recommendation is for refusal because of the scale of the development. But as I say, it is a finely balanced scheme, and that was one of the driving reasons why it was reported to committee. So I think that's all I need to say, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right, we have three speakers. Again, remind you, limited to 3 minutes. The time will start when you start to speak, and I will try and remind you when there's 1 minute left. I assume it's the order that I've been advised here. Jim Lewis first. Thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you very much for letting us in here today to speak. Yes, as Chairman has kindly said, I'm Jim Lewis. I am the Managing Director of Contigo. I also am principally the responsible applicant for this application. And I just say thank you for letting us come here to speak to you all today. And a particular thanks to Mr. Stephen King for his positive engagement throughout, because he's allowed us to settle the technical matters, which he's already referred to. And we obviously had hoped to have a positive recommendation, but we understand the reason for refusal. But obviously, as Mr. King has very kindly already pointed out, it's very much in balance, and this is where we would like to enlist your support to help us do what we need to do. And as again has already been referred to throughout, you'd be aware of the recently adopted plans, which means that right there, right across our northern boundary, right to our boundary, there is proposed development. And there's 1,400 houses going in there. There are people requiring jobs. We're a local employer. And then if you start looking more closely at the site itself, as Mr. King has already referred to, there's that extant permission for the Cells for Life building. I have spoken to the principal owners of Cells for Life, and they have confirmed they intend to act upon that planning permission within this year. And that building actually is about although ours looks high, that building is 2.5 metres higher than the building that we've actually put a proposal in. And also, as you well know, again to the south, which therefore hems us right in, is that battery project, the battery back grid balancing.
And that actually stands right between that building and the Kent's farmhouse as well. So it's, that is standing closer and already there and more impactful on the local area. So with having said that, to the north and to the south and to the east, we've already got development. It's already there, of sort of somewhat commercial nature. So therefore, we are already on the site and we're already providing jobs and we desperately need more space for the viability of our business. So just a simple question, the committee here gave permission for the Sales for Life building for a business that doesn't actually exist on the site at current. We're already there for the smaller extension proposal. We'd just like to commend this to the committee to help us on our journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. Deborah Southwell.
Once again, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Deborah Southwell and I'm the Operation Manager at Contigo. And there were three things that I wanted to cover today. One of the things I wanted to cover was current employment. Another thing was future employment and our growth plans. So currently we support 30 household incomes beyond that within our community. And most of those people live locally, just like many of you do. And as there was reference made to the 1,400 houses that are going to be built within a very close vicinity to us, we potentially could be the employers of some of the people living in those houses. And when we look at our growth plans, our development is pivotal to us growing. And we understand that with our business model and with our national customers across the country, we could take our business and put it anywhere. We have a movable model, but we don't want to do that. We have invested in our local community, in the staff that we currently have. We have trained them, we have spent money on them, we have gone on a journey with them where we are at a point of exponential growth. And I really want to ask you, when you consider the proposal, that you consider that. The team that we currently have in place, the future employment that we could give in our local community, and the growth that we're proposing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. Nathan Lewis.
Thank you. So I'm Nathan Lewis. My role at Contigo is Sales Director. Contigo was established in 1995 and we've continued to support that local community ever since. Contigo has occupied the site for over 2 decades, where we have received comments from our locals that we are good neighbours. In this time, the operation has grown, but the key factor to this new proposed building is for a better working environment. Good employees need good working conditions, and that's why much of the proposed building is designated to provide spacious and pleasant working conditions. Our current operation is requiring us to use remote storage facilities in Bolney, so this means extra travelling to and from these remote locations in commercial vehicles. We're an ISO 14001 and committed company. we identify that this building has significant impact on our commitment to reducing our carbon footprint. As further contribution to reaching our 14,001 commitments, it is our intention to generate more electricity than we would consume via solar panels. This entails a substantial investment from us on the electricity grid to enable this. Also, we are fully supportive of paying our significant contribution for the total access determined payment, and will welcome this being used towards cycling and walking improvements to the Burgess Green Circle route. We want to continue what we do now, but better, looking to you for support of this application to allow us to provide better working conditions and improve environmental credentials which align with your council's objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you want to comment on that at all, Stephen? The only comment I would make is that it is true that there is a development planned right up to the boundary, but at this stage it is planned, so we can't give too much weight to that until the plan has gone before an inspector. But it is true that it is there and may happen at some stage in the future. Right, open to members. Councillor Swatman.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to reiterate, this proposed plan is similar in height to what was proposed there before. I'm assuming that was correct. Because the main reason for the refusal, I think, is the bulk of this building.
Yeah, it is. Looking back, I've just been looking back at the report for the Cells for Life building, and that refers to the footprint being 66 metres by 18 and then by 8 metres high, which is what's referred to here. So yeah, very similar in terms of height.
It's very similar.
Yeah.
Personally, I'll just draw members' attentions to policy DP1, which I think this application actually conforms to, because one of the things in our district plan is to supply 543 jobs a year. And I think that's something, if we're not achieving it already, we need to maintain. We have an application here that is actually going to create more jobs to make the economy more sustainable. I also want to question whether the actual benefits of this application outweigh the harm. You know, I think they, from what I'm seeing, they do. So I think, you know, I'll be supportive of this application. And in DP1, page 97, it does say supporting existing business and allowing them room to expand, encouraging them with investment, etc., and provision for new employment, land and premises will be made. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to listen to other members. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Jackson, as a local member, I should have asked you first.
Sorry.
I apologise.
Obviously, I'm familiar with this site, and of course I visited there on Monday in the frosty conditions. Well, I was quite amazed by the mess at the back, where you've got a lot of shipping containers piled on top of each other, which doesn't look particularly sightly. I've known this particular company over the years, slowly growing and developing. It's a useful sort of employment area in that part of the village. Obviously, there is a concern about the effect on the listed building, but as you said, it's some way away. It's between, there's a battery farm between it, and it's probably produce a less than substantial effect on the listed building. The other question is on the fact that Malthouse Lane is a quite narrow country lane, but I should imagine most of the traffic movement will be from this site northwards to the Jane Murray Way rather than southwards. In terms of the number of cars it might generate, well, compared to the sort of extra number of cars that Hurst College produces at drop-off and pick-up times, it will probably be only a small extra proportion of what actually travels up and down that lane. It does refer to sort of, horse riders use this between the bridle path and the livery stables. Well, if you're going to be riding a horse on a public highway, like all people, you should do a proper risk assessment, and it shouldn't be out on the roads when it's likely to be busy with lots of traffic, maybe at sort of 9 o'clock in the mornings or 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoons. So, and if, in fact, looking at the comments of the parish council, they say they're ambivalent about this. They haven't made a decision either way. They said they'll leave the decision to the district planning committee to make a decision on this particular site. So they're not strongly for or against it. And then, of course, the fact we haven't had any objectors speaking here is also testament to the fact that there isn't a strong feeling against this particular development.
Thank you. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Give me his red light.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. The background, and Councillor Sweatman's already touched on it, is that we should be looking to encourage economic growth within the district and employment and so on. I was interested to see the cross-section that Stephen put up there, showing the height of the proposed development next to the current buildings. And that's the one, yes. Now, it does seem to be significantly higher. I don't know you say it's 8.8 metres in height. What's the height of the existing buildings then? I couldn't quite see it on the detail.
Without scaling it off, it looks like there's about half to the ridge height, but they are, you've seen from the photographs, they're quite.
Would I be able to answer that question? Because I do know that question.
No, sorry.
Sorry.
It does seem to be from that plan. It does seem to be significantly higher. I accept that, and clearly that's the basis, or part of the basis, for not making a recommendation to approve. But I was very interested to hear about the site next door for, is it Sales for Life, that has been approved for that sort of height.
Yes.
There does seem to be a bit of a conflict there, and I tend to sympathise with the applicant on that point, and I wondered, although it's not perhaps been built yet, what the thinking was behind that.
Yeah, in terms of the Cells for Life building, the history of that is set out in the committee report. It all stems from the fact that there was a building on that site before, back in 2007, I think, former chicken sheds that had a planning permission to be demolished and replaced, and works did commence in terms of the demolition, so that original planning permission was kept alive. So throughout all of that period of time, gradually moving on, there's always been an extant permission on that site and a building that used to exist there, and that was part of the reasoning behind eventually getting to the planning permission that's on the screen now. So that's still extant. That could be built. It's not personal to Cells for Life. It is a planning permission that runs with the land. Yeah. But yeah, that is there. That runs out in October. So at any point up until then, the conditions could be cleared relating to that, and work started, and that could be in place. So that is the fact that could exist is a material consideration that members are perfectly entitled to take account of in assessing this application.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Overy.
Hi, thanks, Chair.
one of the main considerations of this is the fact it's in the countryside, and there's no denying that fact. However, if we consider the site itself as a rectangle, there's the existing development, there's a proposed development next door, and then there's the battery storage diagonally to the rear, which leaves the top corner, which is covered in shipping containers and hard standing, and could technically be described as brownfield anyway. So on the basis that the new development have minimal impact on the nearby Kent's Farmhouse, and would provide additional jobs and an allowance for a local company to expand, I think in proportional terms, there's more in favour of the development than against it in actual fact, and I think I would be minded to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bates.
Yes, I'm more in favour of this application than the recommendation by other colleagues. I did go to the previous site visit application. In fact, I did cycle there. But I think that the consideration or concern about the size of the building could be likened to the one that we approved at Bolney. We had the same sort of scenario of, well, we were concerned about its mass, but it's now been built and it seems to fit okay underneath the Bolney flyover. I think my biggest concerns, and I don't suppose we'll get any real answers on this, is that it's the movement to the site and onto the site with what we might consider to be rather large vehicles in the countryside. So that's, but I think the building would look a better eyesore than the containers that we saw on site. I was sort of thinking that maybe a better screening of the site could be done, but I mean, offset against the battery farm, I think that it looks a much better proposal than that we saw there with the railings. So basically, overall, I would say it was worth considering approval. The one thing I would like to make is the plea for, if Contigo can do something about it, is to try and stop the removal of this wonderful oak tree, just to allow one extra car park to be built on the previous application. So if they could go away and think about it and try to come back to the council and say, we don't really need all these car parking spaces and we can retain that tree, I would love to hear that.
Thank you. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chair. Excellent presentations, you know, and that's a powerful plus for this forum here when people come and make a case. Very, very well done. Clearly it's a successful business, wants to grow, hungry, but very respectful, working with the officers. Absolutely superb. DP14 in our district plan is crucial. We don't often come across applications like this, and I feel that this application, DP14 cries out for supporting applications just like this, especially if the planning balance is mixed, and I'm fully supportive. You know, with the MPPF, whatever happened to the presumption in favour of sustainable development? If ever there's a case of that, it's this. So I, you know, fully support and move to approve, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, there was a slide earlier that had the Regulation 19 area in conjunction with the site. Could you just put that on, and just to confirm, sorry, my eyesight, where the...
Yeah, so the site, so the site of the planning application is just here. So as the speakers have correctly said, the proposed boundary for this allocation in the submission draft district plan comes right up to the northern boundary of the site. So I'd say the application site just there. So it's the pink area, site allocation. So right up to it.
Thank you.
Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to echo Councillor Bates on the oak tree on the Cells for Life plot, an appeal for that. I'd also like to see a hedge along the bridleway. There is one already the other side, but it would be nice if there was one on the side nearer to Contigo as well, so that people going along the bridleway were shielded to some extent. I hope we would see the removal of all the containers, and I wonder if this goes ahead, would we get the TAD contribution of 30,900? And regarding cycling to this site, it is only 270 metres west of the Burgess Hill boundary. It's so close, so it is actually quite accessible by bike, especially with the new green circle being all-weather. So I'd like to see lots of cycling provision and a travel plan reflecting that, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bergman.
Yeah, very briefly, I would like to support this application, partly because I think we should support local business. Despite the bulk of the development, I don't think it's causing any significant harm, taking this around into account.
Thank you. Did you want to comment on any of that, Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just in terms of the question, the TAD payment, if members were minded to approve the application, then we would look to secure that TAD payment through a Section 106 legal agreement. You've heard that the applicants are content to make that payment. It is required as part of the overall proposal to make the development acceptable. We would also obviously have to look at the conditions on any planning permission, and they would cover the standard things of materials, drainage, etc., provision of the car parking, retention of the car parking, landscaping, etc. And if members were minded to approve the application, I'd suggest that those conditions would be drafted in consultation with the Chair and Vice Chair. But I think that's it in terms of those points.
I sense that, on balance, members are minded to approve this. Would I be correct? If we could have the local Councillor Jackson, will Councillor Jackson wish to move? Yeah. A seconder? Thank you, Councillor. So, subject to agreement being drawn up within 3 months?
Yeah, we normally.
Yes, within 3 months. For payment of the TAD payment, and that conditions were agreed between the officer, the Vice Chairman and myself. That's the motion we would be looking at. So can we move to a vote, please? Right, that is unanimous. So it is approved. Thank you. Right. So, item 7, questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2, due notice of which has been given. I have none. So I declare the meeting closed at 16:36. Thank you for your attendance. Could you just wait until the feed is off, please?